Hello, everyone watching. Welcome to Next Big Future. Tesla has rolled out in Austin for Robotaxi. It's been 2 weeks now, and there's a lot of things that have happened, and a lot of things that look like will happen. So I have Randy Kirk here with me, and we've both been looking at that a lot. I'm going to quickly go over just a few bits of data, and then we'll have a general discussion. So let me um, share some of this. So one thing is that Waymo, Farzad had some videos showing multiple Waymos pulling up to a busy Austin restaurant, and they were blocking traffic. You can see that there's two lanes going one direction, and the Waymo just parked right in the middle of the road. It would be there for minutes, and then another Waymo would come up and would stop there. A normal human would, a taxi driver would pull into the parking lot and do the pickup and drop off there. But Waymo was repeatedly doing it. And then there was out of like six cars, one Waymo did go into the parking lot. The Tesla pulled up in the other direction and did turn into the parking lot. It waited on the other side and then pulled into the parking lot. That goes to incidences of blocking traffic. And we know this is a common thing because Austin, the city of Austin, is giving out pretty much daily information about Waymo and the other companies. So there's um, Tesla, Waymo, Zoox are the main ones. Before that, there was Cruise, etc. This is the June instance. They had 10 incidents for Waymo in June. Five were safety concerns. Um, Two were blocking traffic, and then three were nuisance, which I think is related to kind of blocking traffic or causing problems with it. And then, um, sorry, Tesla had the one incident in all of 2025, um, and that includes July. And Waymo has had 46 incidents overall in 2025, and then there were another two in July. So July 1st and 2nd, they had two more safety concerns, and
Mm.
they had two collisions last year when they're still testing. Before they started rolling out service in March, they had two collisions and about 20 other instances in their testing phase. Um, so I described that, and then there is evidence of more testing in expanded area in downtown for Teslas. So I'll stop sharing. And then what reactions and other things do you have there, Randy?
Yeah, so I think the key thing here is that both of them are having incidences. So, we could certainly do the math and kind of come up with a incident per ride or incident per mile or, something like that. Maybe there's not really enough data yet for Tesla to make any kind of conclusions. But I think maybe the first thing we might say is both of them can drive.
Right. Both of them can drive. Yeah.
Both of them are meeting the the base criteria for safely riding around the city. Now,
Yeah.
Waymo maxes out, I think, at 45 or 50 miles an hour now. I think
Mhm.
they're maybe experimenting with 55 miles an hour on some more like a highway within the city, but not yet going on freeways. Tesla, of course, is totally capable of going on freeways, even though they haven't started doing that as part of the robotaxi service.
Right.
But I think, we all know that Teslas are actually safer on the freeways than they are in the cities, just like all cars are.
Mm.
So I think it's just a matter of time before they start allowing the cars to go also on the freeways. So the fundamental case, I think, has been built by Waymo. They've been, good for them. They've been building the case that even though there are incidents and there are problems, but that both of them can do the basic job.
Right. Right. And these are minor safety instances, like the Tesla safety instance was avoiding a possible fender bender where a UPS driver was going to back into a parking space. So it was a low speed thing if it had happened, but it would have caused, some bumper damage possibly on the vehicles, which, obviously people don't want that to happen. But it would have been a um, media circus
Right.
if it had occurred, right? So it's unfair, but Tesla is not held to the same standard Waymo because I didn't know about the two collisions they had in Austin until I looked at the numbers. And well, there was two collisions back in 2024. No one talked about it.
Right.
right? Utterly zero discussion. The blocking of traffic, it happened for Cruise and Waymo back in San Francisco. That was a huge deal because it created, like an hour-long traffic jam. So when it actually impacted a lot of people versus only a dozen cars around a particularly busy restaurant, right?
Right.
Actually blocking off multiple things, even multiple cars there, that's when the real problems occur. Um, and so far, Cruise and Waymo have had those incidences. Tesla has not had it, but we have had the um, FSD, the owner, be the one who like, okay, something's gone wrong. So there's no opportunity for Tesla to generate that kind of incident. Um,
Right. So then the Waymos that are blocking traffic, where the Teslas are not, I'm going to propose an idea here, which maybe others have said. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody say it yet, which is that the data that Tesla has been gathering for all these years, all the camera data they've been gathering, that data can be used to see what is the smartest way to leave somebody off at a restaurant or at a shopping center or at a strip mall, that, and then if they haven't been, because they weren't really, that wasn't really the main focus for the last 6 or 7 years, but starting with, 6 months ago, when they started doing the robotaxi services up in the Bay Area with a safety driver involved,
mhm.
they started then to say, okay, let's start making sure that we're paying attention to the data on what's the smartest way to let a passenger off or to pick up a passenger, because this could make a huge difference in terms of the customer experience.
And particularly, some of the main uses for ride sharing are going to the airports.
Right.
And airports, as everyone knows, pick up, drop offs, they're always blocking traffic. It's a more matter of minimizing what will happen,
Right.
right? And like I just went to the airport and they're saying, okay, they had um the humans directing traffic. So then you have to be able to follow
Right.
hand signals, right? Or they're yelling at you, keep moving, don't take that parking spot, go up ahead. They're giving you particular directions about what you have to do.
Right.
So um, currently, Waymo's, I think, I'm not sure if they can go to the airport. Well, they can't go to the highway. So then right now they're testing highway. They're using safety drivers still there, and there was an incident in San Francisco where the Waymo's had gotten themselves into a spot where the only safe thing to do was to go onto the highway,
Mm.
but they weren't allowing themselves to go onto the highway, right? Because they weren't safe enough yet. There were no safety drivers in there. So
Right.
then they created massive traffic jam. So then
Oh,
they have their road service, which is basically humans, come out and save the vehicles. They have to come in and start driving. But it took like, half an hour,
sure. Sure.
something. But they were causing significant traffic jams with that issue. So going on highway, the capability there, because FSD does highway driving all the time. I'm suspecting, like you say, that Waymo could probably do it. Is a question of, are you concerned about an incident with a highway speed accident?
Yeah.
Right, right. So that would be why you're not doing it. And then going to the airports, and then that'd be the big unlock of a lot of activity, because that's where a lot of the Uber activity is. Yeah,
Sure, sure. And for Waymo, they don't have millions of miles of data on the freeways.
right.
And quite frankly, as safe as the Teslas are on the freeways, the real issue for Teslas has always been merging in difficult situations, getting off at the right freeway off ramp, especially merging when you're getting on if it's a lot of traffic. I've even had situations where getting off, even though the car knew that the next exit was where it needed to get off, there was a lot of traffic in that lane and it couldn't find a way to get in. So Waymo doesn't have this experience, but on at least on my trips back and forth across Los Angeles, one of the worst freeways, worst in terms of traffic in the world. Um, the Teslas now are excellent at being able to weasel their way into the lane and find a spot and making sure they get off where they're supposed to get off. So they're really good, but it took years,
Mhm.
and millions of miles of experience.
There's something else I think that could be the major unlock for Tesla, but we're not for, well, I guess Waymo could get it from Google. So is that having the next generation of large language model,
Okay.
Grok 4 is coming.
Yes.
And then if you have chain of thought reasoning around it, like it's basically, you're going through a decision tree of
Yes.
like, you know, should I take this parking spot? Should I keep going? What should my behavior be? And then you basically interpret the situation and then make a call, right? And then you're defaulting to what's the safest option, what's the most least disruptive option kind of thing. So um, XAI and Grok, there's indications that one, they've created a Grok 4 and that should be out in days. Elon's talked about just after July 4th, which sounds like this weekend. And then having that system integrated with the car and with Robotaxi would have, that kind of decision stuff easily done. Like right now, Waymo has to phone a friend, which is basically talk to a human to say, what's the choice here?
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck. I can go here, I can go there. I know what to do. Tell me what to do on this decision, right? I can drive. I just need to pick a better of two options or three options here.
Okay.
And if you have an LLM that's doing it, so Waymo's owned by Google, a Gemini 2.5, a Gemini 3 could be applied to make this choice problem um, reasonable. Those models, when you give it a reasoning problem, usually they come up pretty good. So if you want to have automation there, then you could have that choice happen.
Yeah, so I've been saying for a year at least that the Grok getting into the car was going to be a huge selling advantage for Teslas just as a car.
Mhm.
But then putting it in a robotaxi, there's all kinds of possibilities. The Grok customer service person could be asking questions, about you don't want it to be too intrusive, but maybe when you first get in, it could say, is everybody got their seatbelts, buckled, or somebody doesn't? I mean, it could be saying, have you enjoyed your time in the city so far? I mean, there's
Right.
so many ways that it could turn into a fun way. Make it almost like a Disney ride
Mhm.
by comparison with the others. And kids in particular are going to be totally delighted by that. And
Mhm.
kids at heart are going to be delighted by that.
Yeah, other countries, it's a huge deal to have. I think China,
Yeah,
where they're working on putting in their automation or Siri kind of like things,
right,
where it's a big selling point to be able to talk to your cars and have a better customer experience.
right.
So it
So what
looks
about
like,
what
go
about the
ahead.
expansion? What about the expansion then? We're looking like we're going across the river.
Right. So for me, it's the number of vehicles. So I think it's the holding back to 10 or some other smaller number is more about um, ensuring caution, having the data before expanding, right? So if they got the data and right, one incident, over 2 weeks, and it looks like it was, more, preventative, in terms of it wasn't causing a problem caused by the vehicle. It would lend itself towards looking like expansion is warranted. And then having the people to cover, you know, it can easily go to 100 vehicles and still have 100 safety drivers because you think they're hiring more safety drivers.
Right.
So getting to 100, which is Waymo's level, same size area, which is just adding in the downtown area. It looks like that should happen in July. So we're in July 3rd. That, you know, mid-July, end of July for sure. I would, my expectation is at least the same size as Waymo in Austin,
Mhm.
100 vehicles, the full downtown area. It seems like, yeah.
So what is your opinion? Do you think that they will need to do this kind of massive kind of pre-mapping or um, uh, some kind, they're sending in lots and lots and lots of cars
Mhm.
into the new areas before they certify them, so to speak. Do you think this is going to be an ongoing thing that they'll always do, or do you think right now they're just trying to make sure that that if they use a lot of of methodologies for picking up information that it's the same as what they're getting from pure vision.
I think it's an abundance of caution that they, do an A/B test where there's times where they load up the data and they can know when did this help, right? If they found, if we didn't have that data, this would have caused a problem, and we avoided three incidents, right? Then they could say, okay, maybe we want to keep doing that. And then we have to figure out how to scale when we have to gather this information, right? So if they have to do it, then I say they would do it if they see the benefits still there. But if
Mhm.
the AI gets smarter, more parameters, whatever, and then they can see the drop off, this was not mattering. We're able to make the decisions because they have a lot of data. They know
Yeah.
when is this important, when is it not.
Yeah. It would seem like for the whole United States, at least, that they would have pretty significant data for every road in the country.
Right.
So it was a little surprising to see all that. But again, abundance of caution. Nothing wrong with that. I'm all for caution. And the payoff is going to be so massive that
Yeah.
spending a little money up front in order to make sure that it's working well, it's probably a good idea.
And also they had a navigation disengagement where they
Oh,
were going into a gated community,
yeah,
right? But the thing is, the mapping and the gated community stuff is not like that thing didn't exist before.
I
So
know.
the hyper mapping is you do it once, if you have things figured out, is the actual like when we humans go driving,
Yeah.
it's it's irrelevant. Okay, these are the lanes going each direction.
Mhm.
There are some places where they dynamically shift lanes based on
Right.
um, time of day traffic,
Right.
right? But all those things are consistent. Once you know and have the area, then what Waymo and Apollo Go and the other LiDAR companies have done is that they're constantly updating because they can't handle the construction zone and the other stuff. So then they're like re-updating their maps all the time. So they're heavily dependent upon the hyper mapping,
Mhm.
right? And we know Tesla can handle unusual situations, new situations that are not mapped. And they also make those calls and they override. The maps say this, but here's what I'm seeing. I'm going to react to that. Just like we do. Map says this, but that guy's coming right at me. I got to do something, right? So the top priority is I must react to what I'm seeing. A car's coming at me, something like that. I need to turn. There's construction, there's police, there's stuff happening. That overrides the the secondary level of the maps telling me something is just a user a user experience thing. Like I don't want to waste 10 minutes trying to turn into a gated community or do something around it if I didn't know that that was there, right?
So some speculation today that I heard was that the Model Q might have been held up because they wanted the Model Q to be a second Robotax, a second Cybercab. In
Yeah.
other words, we've got a two-seater, but if you want a four-seater or five-seater, then you've got to go to a Model Y. A Model Y is very expensive,
Hmm.
and you don't want to necessarily be putting Model Ys out into the fleet, except for the Airbnb side. But for the Tesla side, they don't necessarily want to be putting out a bunch of Model Ys into the fleet.
Hmm.
It would be better to put this Model Q out into the fleet, and that maybe this Model Q will be a four or five seater, and will have steer by wire so that it's very easy to remove the steering wheel when the time comes.
Okay. Based on that theory, like I you and I were thinking about that like 6 months to a year ago. So why would that be a surprise? Like
Yeah,
all this.
it might not be a surprise, and it may not have held anything up. There's another theory that the Model Q is being held up because the big beautiful bill, the $7,500 goes away at the end of the third quarter, and so they feel like they can sell all the Model 3s and Ys that they want in the third quarter before the $7,500 goes away. And so the Model Q would come in the fourth quarter when they need the less expensive vehicle.
But that doesn't apply for China.
Yeah,
China
it'll apply
is,
for
is the
China.
main place where you would want to have your Model Q.
Yeah.
You want to get down to $25,000 versus, $32,000 or whatever it is. There
Right.
is no subsidy there.
Right.
And the TAM we know is 2 to 3 times bigger. So all those theories do not apply to China.
That's true. That's
And
true.
so,
Or to Europe.
or to Europe. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the main difference of a compact Y,
Right.
that could go for a 3-seat Y. But yeah, it goes to either you're ready to build a million more cars or you're not.
Yeah.
Right. And, um, you know, having some delays, a week, a month, um, they were hoping for first half. Obviously, I'm sure they tried as hard as they could. And then, you know, one of the VPs, wherever, talked about in the summer. So they're already several months ago talking about kind of like hedging on their first half to include the summer kind of thing. And again, it's the kind of thing where everything has to go right in terms of like
Right.
supply chain, like a lot of stuff has to happen to
Sure.
achieve
Sure.
this thing. Um, it's something like where they knew that a year and a half ago when they said, "Hey, it's going to be in the first half of this year." So you would have said year and a half, but you would have given yourself like, we really probably could hit, January this year, but we're going to give us first half just because I want to be sure
Right.
I can do it, right?
Right.
So as you say, stuff happens and then you don't make it. Um, this is the kind of thing where if you're a corporation, a big corporation, they're, $1 trillion corporation,
Yeah.
and then you're giving guidance to the market where you say, we will, they said several things which didn't happen. This first half of the year for the new car didn't happen,
Mhm.
right? You said first half of the year, they could have updated 3, 4 months ago when
Mhm.
they asked again on the previous call, are you going to hit? Oh, yeah, 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 it's in the thing. So like, again, black and white 3 months ago, they could have updated and said, okay, yeah, maybe, it takes a bit longer, right? I think it'd be more, as a shareholder, as someone, it's better to say it, own up to it once you know, okay, it's not going to be June 30th, to have it like blow right by. Same thing for, semi-truck release. Okay, they had a bunch of problems with the
Right.
semi truck,
Right.
and then they didn't release it. It's 2 years late. They did not have an executive come out and talk about it
Right.
until like 9 months later, a
Right.
year later. After like, okay, we knew you missed it, but
Right.
then you don't own up to it. It's like I'm talking to my kid or something like that. It's like a 10-year-old kid and it's like, yeah, yeah, I didn't happen. Well, I didn't do my homework, blah, blah, blah. It's like own up to it before to get that, especially for this is the way those calls are supposed to work. So the semi truck, the battery stuff, like own up to all the problems
Yeah.
fast so we know.
Yeah.
But then it ends up that we're speculating what afterwards, like why they miss it, right? There's no reason for you and I to speculate. They should be telling us, here's why we missed it. Here's why we didn't update 3 months ago,
Right.
right? So that goes to, as much as I love the company, as much as I love they're
Right.
doing, and they're going for the 10x things. When you're going to miss things that we're expecting to happen, tell us
Right.
ahead of time.
Right. You
But
take,
anyway,
yeah.
I'm still expecting the car. But the thing is, now it goes to, well, when did it come? It could be months, 2 months, 3 months late. Who
Right.
knows? I'm still expecting them to say, but then am I giving them more credit than they deserve? You
Right.
know, because you blew it off. You blew off the timeline, and there's no like on X, Elon saying, here's what happened. Sorry, missed it. Here's what I didn't update, 3 months ago. Um, I'll be super pissed if we don't see that car, in Q3 in volume sold. That would be very, very annoying.
Very
Um,
annoying. Okay. All right. We'll give you that. That's a hundred
yeah,
hundred percent. So
yeah,
now we've seen, a Brian rant.
yeah.
We have Randy.
Against
We
Tesla.
have Randy rants all the time. Now we got a Brian rant.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm expecting, we're seeing evidence that, I view as evidence that they're coming up with a compact car, they're coming with the real car, the real Model Y. It's coming, but it's coming a touch late. I'm expecting the in the summer thing to happen, which is hopefully end of July, but I could easily see end of August before it comes out. But the evidence suggests it's there. You know, things are happening, but yeah, I guess part of that communication is the whole Osborning effect thing that you
For
only
sure.
announce when it's there. But if you, again, the Osborne thing goes to if I'm going to completely miss what I told you in
Right,
black and
right,
white
right.
before,
Just say, hey, we're putting it off 3 months.
yeah, you just say it.
Yeah,
Right. So yeah, at least they didn't miss the Robotaxi.
yeah,
They
yeah.
squeezed that in June, but it was kind of like when you say June, I really think you should be targeting like June 1, right? And then anyway, goes to a little bit more under promise. Give yourself more leeway. Yeah.
Right, 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 right.
Mhm.
Indeed.
Okay. Anything else we want to discuss? So with the stock basically flat, we have
It was down a little bit in the after hours, but not enough to even blame it on anything. I mean, it's down a couple of bucks.
mhm,
It might be the $7,500 going away, but I think it's probably more likely the Elon Musk, complaining about the big beautiful bill and his comments about that he might start another party.
mhm,
That's that the idea that he might be distracted again
mhm,
is more likely to be causing that $2. But that's not. But again, $2 for Tesla,
mhm.
that's kind
Yeah.
of like flat.
Right.
It's the same
Right.
thing. It's
Yeah.
flat.
So market's going to close tomorrow, July 4th, right?
Right.
And but this weekend we're expecting I'm actually expecting the Grok 4. And then
Yes.
I guess we're gonna see if I'm expecting no political party tomorrow. Because he said within a day he would start. But then and there've been stuff like Mario having it next space, discussing it and stuff like that. And they're like talking about again all the bluster from Trump and all the bluster from Elon
Yeah.
as if it's going to happen. It's like, hey, he just blew off, a new car being introduced the first half of the year, right? And then you believe him about starting a new party, you
Hey,
know?
maybe. So I've been thinking about this.
Yeah,
Maybe he's going to start a new party, and the first member will be Trump.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He'll have to change the name to MAGA Party, though. But
right.
yeah, I don't think. But and that was the second thing I thought of was, everybody's so high on JD Vance.
Hmm.
Is the new party going to be a party that's going to go up against JD Vance in 3.5 years?
Again, like in order for it to make a difference, it's supposed to um, take away moderates from Democrats and Republicans.
Right,
That's what they kept saying.
right.
But there have been third way parties, there have been all these other parties where they try to sell that same vision,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And then the fiscal responsibility thing.
yeah,
The reason Democrats and Republicans don't do it is because when the Tea Party went hardcore on let's get fiscal responsibility, they didn't win enough seats or influence SWAT. They got some stuff in there, but they didn't really move. So to say that that is the winning formula, even though it's getting worse, even
yeah,
though the debt and
yeah,
other stuff
yeah,
is
yeah,
getting
yeah,
worse,
yeah, yeah.
right? People aren't voting that way. It's like until we say yes, we will vote that way. That's what I want,
Right. Well,
right?
the other thing he forgets is if he's going after the moderates, let me see, what's the definition of moderate? I don't know. What do I want? Let me see. I could want that or I could want that. Oh, today I'm thinking this.
Yeah,
You need the zealots. You need the base. You need the
right,
hardcore. You're not going to have zealots out of the moderates. You
right,
know?
right.
So where are you going to get your hardcore that's going to raise the money, knock on doors?
It,
Uh,
it's why they both parties went to the hardcore extremes was because that's where the activity, the energy is,
sure, sure.
right? So, um, a activist moderate group.
It's kind of an oxymoron.
Right, right. That being said, he has load the money, he can develop a ground thing. If you're saying, um, I'm going to put this money in and I want to have 100,000 people working for me on this thing and then pushing that along,
Mhm.
right? He can totally do that, right? It wouldn't be he has to figure out how to get maximum influence by doing that thing. If I'm stepping up the activity,
Right.
what is this thing that I'm doing,
Right.
right?
And they had a poll that said that 40% of the people polled said that they would join his party, but there's no platform.
Right,
So
right.
there's this, there's a kind of a joke about something like that. I forget what it was years ago. It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to go follow Elon, and then he puts out the platform. Well, that wasn't what I meant.
Right. Because you're like generic Republican, a generic
Right.
Democrat,
Yeah.
and then you actually have someone and it's like, well, I didn't want to vote for that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's the huge problem with all these things. It's like actually doing something, and it's like, oh yeah, I would probably vote for that. Really? When you actually pull the lever,
Uh,
you're gonna do
yeah.
something. I
Exactly.
don't. There's no indication that's be the case. So, um, again, it's a lot of talk, right? So. People discount, oh, and look, he promised $2 trillion in Doge cuts because $1 trillion Doge cuts
Right.
got to 50, 150 million, right? So there's times where he can't follow through, right? So, and then also on the Trump side, they're still trying to pass a big, beautiful bill, and
Yeah.
they're eking it by with, like 50 votes in the Senate and JD Vance doing stuff. So that means I'm gonna cut the funding for Elon, SpaceX, and stuff like that. Really? Pass a bill. Pass a bill to do that. It's like, what do a lot of talk, no bills passing, right? So then how much power do you really got? And then if he can pick off a couple of senators with money, maybe you can do some, the same thing, like this, Trump has way more enemies that have done more stuff, how come he hasn't, you know, um, punished or done something to Soros? How come he haven't done, other
Right.
billionaires who are going up against him? Loads of other guys. If
That's right.
he's dictator, like go ahead,
Yeah.
blast them.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's not happening, right?
Yeah.
You have to get judges, like in terms of the whole mechanism of stuff. Yeah. So another rant from Brian.
Another way. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so enough of that. So, I think it's gonna be a great weekend. I'm looking forward to the Rock 4. I think the expansions will happen. My over and under is expanded number of cars. I would say 50 cars, at least the downtown area, like roughly equal size of area to what you're thinking.
Oh, I am completely out of the loop on making these predictions. I'm perfectly happy to predict that we will be giving a very solid downtown coverage, by let's say mid-August. But what I'm really looking for is the announcement or the beginning of seeing some of these cars with all the get-ups on them in a second city like San Francisco or Los Angeles.
Okay, we'll look forward to that.
Okay.
Have a good,
Fourth of
July
July.
4th.
Fourth of July. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
You too.
bye bye.